Good evening. My name is David Smitherman. I am the administrator for Pittsylvania County. This evening we're going to be presenting the proposed budget for FY22 that begins on July 1st. This evening we're recording this presentation so that our folks at home can go back and view it at their leisure. But we appreciate everybody being here this evening. We passed out some materials earlier. There's a letter, a budget letter, which is generally the basis for the presentation, as well as a little information card on our reassessment project, and just a quick cheat sheet on the details of the FY22 proposed budget. Thank you for being here. So this budget has the same tax rate as the previous year and the previous 3 years. Actually, it's 62 cents. We do have an uptick in revenue this year, probably the strongest revenue changes we've had in the past 4 years, attributable largely to COVID relief, not necessarily COVID relief directly to the county, but COVID relief that's going in our citizens' pockets, which is in turn turning into consumer spending, particularly in personal property, which I'll talk about in just a second, which are basically our cars, our campers, and boats. We are proposing to contribute $19.7 million to our school system next year, which is an increase of $250,000 over the current year. 71% of the proposed budget is in 3 large categories: public safety, education, and debt. 29% is left for the remainder of our county operations. On average, our Sheriff's Department employees will see a 8.78% salary increase if this budget is implemented, largely due to a 5% increase that's being passed down by the General Assembly through the Compensation Board, and then the remainder due to the third phase of a pay study to bring our deputies to a market comparable rate. At the conclusion of this fiscal year, our deputies, a starting deputy, should be making a little north of $39,000. So I find it interesting to compare who we are and our rates and our inputs to this budget to some of our neighbors, which we do in 2 different ways here. One is a bar chart that shows the relative tax rates for the surrounding counties, as well as how much revenue those counties bring in with that tax rate. You see Pittsylvania County at 62 cents brings in a little over $400,000. Excuse me, I can't see my numbers. They're off the screen. Brings in about, Kim, help me, what number was that? $427,000 per capita? No, $427 per capita, excuse me. So for every man, woman, and child in Pittsylvania County, that rate brings in about $420-some. A similar rate in Franklin County, they're at 61 cents, brings in about $700 per person. So the difference is the tax base. Tax base is where we generate our revenue. We have a $4.8 billion tax base in the county. Franklin has $7.2 billion, and Bedford has $10.48 billion in taxable land. So Bedford is able to have a 50-cent tax rate, but because of their high tax base, they're bringing in about $775 or $800 per capita in 2020. This chart is old. We didn't have their official numbers except for 2019, but talking to their administrator, they're bringing in about $800 per person on a 50-cent rate. In other words, they could reduce their tax rate to 25 cents and garner the exact same revenue we do at a 62-cent rate because they have so much more tax base than we do, or taxable real estate. Here's another way of looking at it. We commonly talk about value per penny. In Pittsylvania County, 1 penny of levy brings in $427,000. 1 penny of levy in Bedford County brings in $888,000. So you take $888 times 50 cents, and that's exactly what their tax generates in revenue. Same with us, 427 times 62 cents, and you get the amount of real estate tax that we produce. It's important to know this because a lot of people focus on tax rate. In Danville, they have an 84-cent tax rate. Sounds like a really high rate comparative to 62 cents. However, a penny in Danville only brings in $220,000. So they have to put more pennies on the levy to generate a substantial enough income to run their general fund operation. So 62 cents in Pennsylvania brings in $427,000. 84 cents, that's per penny, 84 cents in Danville brings in $220,000 per penny. Here's a split of how our revenue is dispersed between various categories. About 40% or 40 cents of every dollar in the general fund comes from our real estate. 30 cents on every dollar comes from the state. We get a lot of state shared revenue, particularly from the comp board system. We have 5 constitutional officers. In theory, the state produces or provides in state shared revenue to Pittsylvania County sufficient funds to run that operation, which counts for 30% of our general fund budget. In every single constitutional officer department, local tax dollars supplement that operation. So the 30 cents per dollar that the state sends us is insufficient to run our constitutional offices. One that jumps off the top of my head is our sheriff's department costs $12 to $13 million to run on an annual basis. The state only provides about $7 million of that $12 million that it takes to run the sheriff's department. You see our revenue increases $285,000 more next year in local sales tax. That is largely to 2 reasons. One is a lawsuit that changed the way our e-commerce tax, sales tax that you see at the end of your Amazon or Chewy or whatever your order is, they have that local sales tax. Well, formerly, until about 18 months ago, that money went to where the package originated. Now that money is left where the package is delivered. So during this period of COVID, we have seen more e-commerce, and we've seen that sales tax being distributed back to Pittsylvania County. So every time a Pittsylvania County citizen shops online, they're helping Pittsylvania County. But if they get in their car and drive to Danville and shop at Target, they're helping Danville. So there is a case, certainly for e-commerce, helping Pennsylvania County and other rural areas because of that point of delivery sales tax distribution. We also are picking up about $1.3 million more in personal property taxes, cars, boats, RVs, largely because of COVID. That's where people are spending their money right now. They're buying new cars. You can't find an RV right now. You cannot buy a boat. I mean, they're just, as soon as they hit the lot, they're going out. And we're picking up more tax because of that commerce. We picked up $222,000 of new revenue in real estate. There's a lot of real estate development going on in the county right now. You see commercial buildings, metal buildings being built, lots of home improvement projects, new home construction projects. You would think we'd have a higher amount of increase in that revenue source. However, we lost the Hurt power plant in FY21. That will not be on our books in FY22. That's a $50 million hit to our county. So that's $50 million off the top line that is no longer taxable in our county, or we would have seen a larger increase in real estate. Where does our money get spent? Well, 29% or 29 cents of every dollar goes to justice and public safety, 28 cents of every dollar goes to education, 14 cents of every dollar goes to debt. That's your 71% of all expenses go to those 3 categories. And then you see the other, how else it's broken up. We spend about $10 million a year servicing debt. About $8 million of that goes to the 2 bond referendums for our middle schools and our high schools. And we will continue to be paying all of that amount, that $8 million, for I believe the next 5 or 6 years. And then the middle schools, I believe, go off first. Is that right? middle schools. And then the high schools, I think, roll off somewhere around 2034. But we got a good long ways to go on paying off that debt. We have 294 employees in our general fund and total salaries of $21 million for those 294 employees. We are a service business. We can't do anything without people. We don't make widgets. We provide services, and it's a heavy employee-based operation. We have $1.8 million of volunteer support in this budget. That's $1.8 million for our volunteer fire and rescue squads. And we are seeing an uptick in our Children's Services Act, or Comprehensive Services Act, which assists children with behavioral issues that may be affecting their learning. We are anticipating increased costs there, primarily due to the lack of socialization for the last 12 months in our school system. I mentioned $19.7 million in school fundings proposed in this budget. The school board asked for a $1.08 million increase over FY20. We were only to be able to provide $250,000 toward that request. However, we have increased our funding for our school system by $2.5 million over the last 5 years. The chart on the left of the screen shows in blue our spending over the last few years, and red is the enrollment. So we've lost about 1,000 children over 6 years, and we've increased our spending not quite $3 million over that same period. And I just hit the wrong button. Let me see. There we go. So just a depiction of where some of our money goes. We hear a lot that we have too many employees in Chatham. We have 6 less employees in Chatham than we did just 4 years ago, and we're doing a lot more with less because we have extremely good employees that are highly productive, and we've channeled our efforts into more production for our organization. We're doing a lot more with 6 less employees than we had just a few years ago. We did get a hit this year that we didn't expect, over $500,000 increase in our contribution to the retirement system. On average, we are paying 12% of every salary toward retirement. That's a big number. And then the employees put 5% on that. So 17% of every salary goes to the VRS system. As a comparison, 20 years ago when I was in this business in North Carolina, we were contributing 4.65% toward retirement. The county's doing 12% today in Pennsylvania. There's a number of reasons for that. One of it has to do with the balance of the state fund, but we also picked up some employees or classification of employees, I guess. They just refigured our numbers for the last 2 years, and because of some changes in where our employees are apportioned, we've had some increases. Our total salary expense, while we've dropped 6 employees over the past 4 years, our expense of paying for employees has gone up $1 million. And most of that's because we didn't give our employees a raise for almost 12 years. And this board has committed to providing a cost of living adjustment every year that is equal to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics annual cost of consumer price index for the southern states. And then our sheriff's office, our sheriff department, sworn law enforcement officers have had their salaries increased by 24% in the last 5 years. We continue to work hard to monetizing our landfill. It is a tremendous asset for the county. Just a few years ago, we had 150 years of life left in that facility. Largely that has to do with the low volume of trash we are bringing in and the improved tactics that we use in burying trash. We're making it more dense, more compact, which extends the lifespan of the landfill. We anticipate that we can still add another 45,000 tons per year to our daily intake or to our annual intake, and still have about 75 years left in landfill life expectancy. Our board has challenged us to continue to monetize that asset, Everything that we're doing right now in solid waste, besides collecting garbage, is being paid for by other people. So it's saving money through our citizens. We're buying a new compactor, a new bulldozer, closing a cell and opening a cell without using the $120 fee that our citizens pay. We're also building 2 new compactor sites in the next year that will largely be paid for by other out-of-county revenue, not through the $120 annual fee, which only pays for collection. That's how much it costs to collect garbage at our 33 dump sites. It's a large county, it's a lot of miles, and it's very expensive to collect trash. Here's where our 3 new convenience centers will be. The green checks are where we will build new compactor sites. You see that the county is very thoroughly covered south of 57. Our board has really been pushing for us to do better north of Chatham. And so we are going to build 3 new compactor sites north of Chatham and eliminate 5 green box sites. Green box sites are the ones that get picked up by the arm, the ones you see at McDonald's, those type. They're much more expensive to operate because they don't hold near as much trash as a compactor does. So we have higher frequency, less trash being collected at the places with an X. When those green checks are built, we will have a much more efficient system and a nicer facilities for our citizens to use. So those new sites will be on Climax Road near Highway 40, Level Run Road up near Straightstone, and Meadow Ridge Court, which is in the basically equidistance on Highway 29 between Chatham and Gretna. So 4 years ago, we made a decision to create a 4-year pro forma. We wanted to operate and have our government live in a known expenditure climate and revenue climate. And we used the reassessment project as the beginning of that 4-year period. So we are entering into FY22, which is the last year of our reassessment cycle, and we will have made it 4 years without any major revenue increases, other than a few fees that we increase. So during that time, 4 years ago, we set a plan, and the orange bars are what our planned expenditures were, our investments. This is our investment plan for that 4-year period. You see that our investment plan, the blue is our plan, the orange is what we actually did. So we've beat our goals on funding volunteer fire and rescue. You see that on the first chart. The second chart is taking care of our employees. We've done extremely well in bringing our employees to market conditions and investing in their insurance and wellness benefits, which you see in the next chart. We have kept our health insurance within a reasonable expenditure. We implemented a merit pay system, which like I said, our employees had not had any kind of raises for performance since 2008. We just finished our first cycle of pay for performance, and we spent less money than we anticipated there. We are not going to meet our goals for school funding, although we did improve by $2.5 million over this period. We have a lot of expenses related to economic development, whether it be incentive payments or development in industrial parks. So we have to squirrel away a lot of money to make sure that we have what I call dry powder to keep investing in our economic development work. We've not been able to sufficiently invest. We've come up about $1 million short, I believe, in those investments. And we're going to have to double down on that going forward. And then we were not able to meet our goals at all related to capital reserve or putting money in to the side to deal with large capital items. And we were not able to set aside funds for the reassessment. Luckily, we saved about $200,000+ in our current reassessment project. And we were able to fund that both in last year's operating budget and finish it in the FY22 budget. And then finally, the big reason that the orange bars don't match the blue bars is because we anticipated about a little over $4 million of revenue from Mountain Valley Pipeline. We anticipated that would have been flowing in several years ago. We have yet to receive $1 from that project because they're still not active and operating. So as soon as that goes in, we should expect somewhere between $1.2 and $2 million annually in revenue from the Mountain Valley Pipeline taxation. We continue to pay down debt. We've paid $33 million in debt over the last 4 fiscal years. We have tremendous debt capacity. We can borrow money. We have projects on our horizon that need borrowing. We have to build a new jail in the next few years. That's a $20 million project. We need to build a courthouse somewhere between years 5 and 10. Looking out, that's about a $45 million project, I think. And we need a new 911 center. Our 911 center is not in a very good location. It's becoming very antiquated. That's probably a $5 million project. So those will require borrowing. We have capacity because our board's done such a good job in retiring our debt. And not only have we retired debt, we've built back our rainy day fund, for lack of a better word, or our savings. We have increased, as you see, we hit bottom in FY18, which was my first full year here. And then we had the reassessment, and we've started building up. And it's not that we've been pushing money into that account. It's because our department heads have been extremely frugal. They're returning money every year. We're also using a much more conservative method of budgeting. We don't budget for what some people call, what's the word I'm looking for, Kim? When you have a $70 million organization, you can't spend all that money. You're always going to have changes of employment. You're going to have projects that don't take place. So you're never going to spend all of what you've budgeted. And some people will budget for that gap. There's a term that I cannot think of. But usually we were budgeting $1.5 million of saying we won't spend $1.5 million. So we would plug the budget with fund balance. We started doing that probably too aggressively. We had some other reasons that fund balance dramatically came down over that previous 4-year cycle, but we're budgeting more conservatively. We're returning money to the bank, and our fiscal health is soon going to be back where it was in the mid-teens, 2014. This is a depiction of what's going on in our EMS service. It has changed tremendously in the 4 years I've been here. We now have county employees providing EMS service. We've only been doing that since July 1st. And we've been doing it because of we had one backup provider that we would pay to be on the scene if our volunteers couldn't make it. That company went out of business. We went with another company. The price started going out of the roof. We couldn't justify the expense. So we've started our own backup provider where we have 3 ambulances staffed with county employees. We are billing for our services and collecting about $400,000 a year to recoup those expenses. It certainly doesn't cover all of our expense, but it absolutely helps. But what I love about this chart is that you can see consistently over the past 3 years that, one, our volunteers are catching more calls. They're responding on the first request more frequently than in previous years, and our call volume is up. It's on pace to be up 1,000 more calls this year over last, and 1,500 more calls over the past since FY19. So over the past 2 fiscal years, we're on pace to pick up 1,500 extra calls annually with our volunteer service. This year, we also deployed mid-year a new quick response vehicle staffed with county employees in the 640 area. And in fact, I just got a report today showing the activity in that area, and they are responding up all the way up to Long Island and all the way down to a little south of 57. So they're covering a pretty large territory, and they are making a difference. They're getting to the scene more quickly than our volunteers because they're already in a pickup truck. They're armed with the equipment they need to stabilize and triage a patient. And it's a high-quality service that we're able to do because 640 went out of business. They turned over their assets to us, and we're using those assets to provide professional service in that area. Our Fire and Rescue Commission has been in existence about 13 months now, and they are charged with the oversight and advisement of our volunteer fire and rescue agencies to the Board of Supervisors. So they're kind of the conduit between the volunteers and the board. They have done a lot in 1 year. They established this mantra of one service, one team. It doesn't matter if you're a paid professional or volunteer professional, it's part of the same system, and we're trying to operate our fire and rescue service as a single system. They've had a tremendous number of accomplishments in the first year. They've established minimum training standards. They've established equipment standards. They've established a new funding formula, and they've started working on a strategic plan. They've revised our annual service agreements. They've done a whole lot of work in just a short amount of time. And they meet here in this room the fourth Tuesday of every month. We did get an influx of funds this year from the CARES Act, and we approached this differently than many other, I think, local governments did. We looked at this $10.6 million we got as an investment in our community, not as a spending opportunity. So we tried to put the money in durable things, in durable goods, in buildings, in this room. We invested in this room where we didn't have, and the school board didn't have, a proper auditorium, proper venue that would also support remote distance learning, remote participation in meetings, and we can do that now in this room. We invested in 4 ambulances. That's 4 ambulances our volunteers didn't have to have stews or truck raffles or gun raffles for. We bought those outright and we gave them to our volunteers. We also improved what was previously a liability of the county. The old DSS building at 18 Depot Street is now a tremendous asset. It is not only home for our elections offices, it is also going to be used as an early voting center, and there's a large room in the back that our Board of Supervisors uses for its work sessions, and our employees and our volunteers use as a training room. So we have greatly improved that, and we made a huge investment in GIS, Geographic Information Systems. It was a $250,000 investment. We are moving into a new paradigm of technology now at the county. We will get a lot more powerful information. We collect a lot of data, but we don't know how to use it. We can't extract it and manipulate it and get intelligence out of it. But GIS will certainly do that in our fire and rescue services, in our law enforcement services, in our building development services, and several other areas that we are leaning in that direction, and we will be a better government and it will provide better information for our citizens as a result of that investment. The county is starting to really change topologically. And if you're familiar with the solar project out in Climax, on Climax Road, you'll see that our topography is changing and our vista is changing. There are 12,000 acres of permitted solar development on the books right now that will begin to be developed in earnest over the next 12 months. Our county, believe it or not, has one of the most stringent solar development ordinances among localities in Virginia. There's another map I could show you. We don't allow these installations within 5 miles of another one. So there's a 10-mile diameter off of each solar installation. And our county, based upon our current ordinance, is almost full. There might be 3 more sites available for large utility scale solar of about 1,000 acres or more. But this is going to continue to be more noticeable in our community. We do not get much tax off of these things. As a general rule of thumb, if they cost $100 million to develop, only $20 million is taxable, and then there are reductions off of that. So it's a very small amount. The only positive thing I can say, and it can equally be viewed as a negative, is it does pay more than farmland, but it's taking farmland out of production. So there's a double-edged sword there also. We did make a major announcement 2 Fridays ago. We invested $1 million of our CARES Act money into broadband. And we are going to, right now we have 5 or 6 towers providing wireless broadband service in Mount Airy, Grit, Callens, and White Oak Mountain are the ones that are doing the most. There will now be 18 towers working with River Street Networks. That orange map are the new towers that will be built, which will provide many more opportunities for our citizens to get reliable, high-speed broadband access. We've been working with River Street a lot. For those of you that may know, there are federal funds available for the FCC to build these facilities. It takes a private it takes a provider to do a reverse auction. For those that are listening that live north of Highway 40 in the old People's Mutual Telephone area, that area won a large FCC grant several years ago, and the supermajority, and I mean 90% probably, of the folks that live on 40 North and they're in that People's Mutual Telephone area will have fiber to the home in the next few years. I mean, they're big winners in this. And that reverse auction took place for the rest of the county just in the past 6 months to serve everyone which the FCC considers unserved, which means you have a certain level of speed or less, and I think it's 25 megabits of download speed and 3 megabits of upload speed. If you're under that threshold, you're considered unserved. So there was a reverse auction on that opportunity also. And People's Mutual Telephone, the grant award on the reverse auction was about $2,000 per home. They needed $1,800 per home to make the rest of the county work. The auction came in at $600 per home. So there's a huge delta that may make that project unfeasible for the rest of our county, which is a very difficult thing to say. Anecdotally, the reason it got bid down so low is because Elon Musk and the new Starlink system was also bidding, and across the nation they bid that thing down to where most of these projects are not fundable now or not possible to be produced based upon the low number that came out of the FCC auction. So we continue to monitor that. I tell you all that because I want to impress upon everyone how difficult it is to make broadband work. It's a massive investment. It's a $33 million investment to get the southern half of the county, which is largely Ringgold East and west of Danville and up to 57, those corridors. It's a $33 million project just to do that small area. The People's Mutual Telephone project was a $30 million project. So it's big, big numbers. The county is not in the business of broadband. We're in the business of facilitating the private sector to making this work. We continue to invest in economic development. We've announced 2,000 new jobs and $600 million in investment since 2015. We continue to get a lot of activity in all of our parks. Our economic development activity has not slowed during COVID. We have the only difference is in international trade, we're not getting as much business from people off of North America, but we continue to do a lot of business in the United States.
Every Pittsylvania county property.
Before I make that go, we're in the middle of a reassessment, and we are trying differently than ever before to communicate with our citizens about what is reinvestment, what is reassessment, why do we do this? It's required by state law. Every 4 years, have to do it. Why do we do it, besides the fact that it's required, is to equalize our relative tax payment so that a person with a $200,000 home is fairly paying their share while a person with a $50,000 home is paying an equally fair share. And what happens over time is the value of the $200,000 home may have gone up 8%. The value of the $50,000 home only went up 2%. Well, we have to equalize our taxation so that the relative burden remains fair. And that's why we do reassessment, for equity, for fairness, and to make sure that our values are reflecting market conditions. This is a short video, a minute and 20 seconds maybe, that is just one of many, many pieces of public relations material that we've been putting out to help people understand the importance of reassessment.
Every Pittsylvania County property owner pays real estate taxes. The amount you pay is based on the tax rate, which is the same for everyone, and the assessed value of your property. And reassessment is the legally required process of reevaluating every property so that they are assessed at 100% of the fair market value. This ensures that every property owner's tax bill is both fair and equitable. We're taking a slightly different approach to reassessment this year. We hired Bright Minds, and they are using technology to provide more accurate and equalized results. One of the biggest changes is their use of aerial photography. These aerial photographs, which are captured with drones, allow the reassessment team to take measurements and get a more complete understanding of every property. The team will make in-person visits only to properties where they find discrepancies, like unreported additions or buildings. You may invite the reassessment team to survey your home's interior if there is something that you believe may impact your property's assessed value, but the reassessment team will never request to come inside your home. One of the ways that you can ensure the accuracy of your property's assessment is to fill out the information request, which you should have received in the mail and can also be submitted online. Bright Minds is using technology, working with property owners throughout the process, and using as many data points as they can to ensure the most accurate results possible. You can learn more about reassessment on our website.
So, I wanted to show you this because this is just one piece of a much larger public relations effort that we are embarking upon. For several years, the Board of Supervisors has identified public relations as one of our big opportunities to improve. Our supervisors were somewhat frustrated regarding the nature of calls and complaints they would get. And they felt like if we provided more proactively information to educate our citizens, there'd be more understanding, less calls about things that in some cases don't even pertain to county government, and that our citizens may become more engaged and more educated about the role and function of local government. So we finally were able to hire a public relations manager. And he's been on board for 6 months now. We have greatly improved our social media presence. We are being much more proactive with the outflow of information through press releases. Our website is being improved on a daily basis and is much more manageable, and there's much more information that people want. We most recently have we have a podcast. We have a radio show on WKBY every Monday. We have digital message boards in our county facilities so that we can get out the message so that we can help educate folks when they're in our buildings. And soon we'll have digital message boards at many of our solid waste collection sites. We know that almost every citizen goes to the dump. That's how you get rid of your trash. And so we have a captive audience, for lack of a better term, and we're going to put these digital message boards at these sites, and it'll be things about reassessment, things about garbage. We told the sheriff he can do Pittsylvania County's top 10 most wanted. Whatever those messages are that the public needs to hear from us, we're trying to find creative ways to get that message out and to bring it to them. It's hard for a citizen to reach out to us, so we want to be proactive and bring the message to them. So this budget did not fulfill every request that was made. In fact, here's $1 million worth of requests that we've challenged the board to give us some direction on. Unfortunately, we don't have $1 million to fulfill these items. We've only got about $300,000 available. So there's a few decisions that have to be made by the board, and they'll be working on that beginning tomorrow at 4 o'clock through their finance committee. Going forward, we have one more of these community meetings tomorrow night at Tunstall High School. We will then have a public hearing on Thursday night, and then on April 6th, we will have another work session of the Board of Supervisors, and on April 8th, the Board of Supervisors will be in this room to approve the FY22 budget. That's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have this evening. And we also, if there's anyone watching at home, We do have the capability of receiving your questions through our chat feature on the streaming service. Any questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Angier.
Not directly related to the budget, but you have noted several times about increased public school funding in the face of declining enrollment. And do we have an idea of why enrollment is going down?
Well, population's going down for one thing. Our county population, I fully anticipate when the next census come out, will have declined. Certainly not at the same pace as many other rural counties, but that is certainly a true statement. You know, I can't answer that question. I don't know why our school enrollment is down so much, but we are an aging community. Our median age is going up, not down, which means we have less people that have children in schools. So all those things combined have led to a declining school population. Other questions? By the way, this picture is of Wayside Park. If you hadn't been there, please go. It just got an $850,000 refurbishment. This love sign was constructed by the students at the Career and Technical Center next to the Pet Center on Highway 29 between the Pet Center and the middle school. It's one of my favorite love signs, and the park looks fantastic. There was a new road just built, and it is very, very busy on pretty days. I hope you'll take a look at that. We're also finishing the renovation of the Gretna Library as part of this budget, as well as it's about $200,000 that's being augmented by private fundraising, and that should be complete within the next 9 months, I would say. Yes, ma'am. Yes. So the question is, can we change our stringent restrictions on solar? So our Board of Supervisors passed the 5-mile buffer or 10-mile diameter off of each solar facility just in the last 12 months. So that's fairly new. We also passed a fee this time last year, and we raised the application fee from, I think it was $190 to $5,000 per solar installation. All these are local code. The only thing that's not local code is the method of taxation. So the taxation scheme is put upon us by Richmond. Everything outside of that, we can control this. Anything related to solar that is land use related, we can manipulate locally. That is as simple as a citizen or the Board of Supervisors or staff petitioning the Planning Commission to change the ordinance, having a public hearing before the Board of Supervisors, and a simple majority vote of the board is how that changes. They're not taxed at all. Correct. 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 Yeah, it's an incentive that the state of Virginia has put in place over the last 30 months to make Virginia a viable state, competitive state for solar energy development. That was an act of the General Assembly. Yes. Yes. That is correct. That is correct. So some of them were put in, and I'm sorry I don't have the map, but you'll see that some of our utility scale solar developments are very much closer than 5 miles apart. But they got their permit before we changed the rules. So they are grandfathered. Any other questions? Yeah, I'm certainly not up to speed day by day on the progress of the pipeline. They have had numerous legal challenges. The main line, which is the one you see coming parallel to Highway 40, has had challenges with their DEQ permits, the differences between an open cut across streams and boring under streams. They've been to the Fourth Circuit of Federal Court in Richmond. My understanding is they have the necessary permits to make those stream crossings right now, and that's the activity you're seeing. I fully believe, not for any other reason than my best guess, is that the main line will be completed. It terminates in Chatham at Transco Village, which is just east of Chatham on 57. So that's the main line project. And then there's a second project called Southgate, which which begins in Chatham at Transco Village and will take natural gas through Rockingham County and Alamance County, North Carolina, and terminate south of Burlington, North Carolina. That project is not permitted yet. They are presently seeking a permit through the Virginia Air Board to construct a new compressor station at Transco Village. That project has, I think it may have challenges in its future. I know that Transco, which is Mountain Valley Pipeline Southgate's competitor, has come out in opposition to the project most recently, I think within the last 10 days. So there's lots of unknowns about the future of the Southgate project. But my hunch is that the mainline project will be completed. Yes, sir. Oh, you got one. You got one online? What you got?
Question on Facebook from Evan Irby. What percentage of calls is the public safety running as opposed to the volunteer agencies, and what percentage of funding is the public safety receiving compared to the volunteers?
I don't have those numbers in front of me. I would say that less than 10% of total calls are, 8 to 12% of total calls are probably being picked up by our paid staff. Funding for the paid staff is around, we have 24 employees in that operation. I don't know the exact cost of the operating budget for our professional staff. Kim, do you know off the top of your head? 800,000 maybe? I want to say we budgeted about $800,000 to $850,000 to run our 3 paid ambulance services. So you take 1.8 to the volunteers, about 850 to the paid for 3 versus 21 or 22, and you see why it's so important that we keep our volunteers healthy and active and supported, and that's what the Board of Supervisors' priority is. Chuck?
Didn't the state make some changes that negatively impacted the amount of revenue you can collect from the solar farms?
There has been a change. This time last year, there was a change. Instead of and it's very complicated. If it's under a certain megawatt, it's totally exempt. Then there's a different schedule if it's between 20 megawatts and 150. So it's a very complicated schedule, but they did offer last year an alternative, which is a flat $1,400 per megawatt of constructed capacity. And we are actually, we talked about it last month in our Board of Supervisors work session. We will talk about it again on April 20th, trying to figure out, do we tax this stuff as machine and tools, or do we take the $1,400 per megawatt? And there's a formula, there's a complicated Excel spreadsheet that we can use to figure out what the net impact is. We don't know that answer yet of which one we recommend, but even at $1,400 a megawatt, we're still nowhere close to taxing the full value of solar. We do have another option, We're just not sure if it's a good option yet, and that's the current decision the Board of Supervisors is trying to make. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so thank you. The question is about the status of our external trash, outside jurisdiction trash. Right now, we receive trash from the town of Bedford, the city of Martinsville, and the county of Henry. And those three localities combined generate 55,000 tons a year, which is just a little more than we do as a county in total. So we've a little more than doubled our flow at the landfill. There are other localities that will have contracts come up in the next 12 months. And we believe our sweet spot is to add is total. If we could bring across the scales, including our trash plus outside trash, 150,000 tons a year, we would feel like we found our sweet spot in our operations, in our longevity, out there with our economies of scale. And so we're going to be looking for about 45 to 50,000 more tons to bring. And when I say outside trash, it's not going to be from far away. It will be from inside of 30 miles, 40 miles, because the economies aren't there for us to go out of state or even as far as Charlottesville. The economy is not there to be competitive on bidding for that trash. So our goal is to be at 150,000 tons a year. And we're one contract away from being there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. No. Well, we're hopeful of keeping the fee where it is. And we think if we can generate 50,000 more tons a year, we think the $120 fee is going to be fine. The $120 fee generates about $3.3 million a year. The collection operation is about $3.5 million a year, somewhere between $3 and $3.5 million a year. So that 120 is a wash to collect trash and get it to the landfill. Right. Well, the $120 fee pays for the collection. If we had to pay for the equipment and the capital investment in the development and closing and management of cells, we would probably need a $250 fee to cover that over a 10-year horizon. Our board wants to offset that cost. We couldn't necessarily, your point was, we could use some of that money to help in other areas of county government. Well, we established solid waste as an enterprise fund. So what it generates must stay there. It can't be used, it can be used to offset a portion of my salary, a portion of pickup trucks that are used in solid waste and in public works. So it's cost allocation. We can allocate some of our general fund costs, but as far as wholesale transfer of funds in the millions and millions of dollars, that would be frowned upon by our auditors. So we have to justify every dollar that solid waste supports the general fund, and we are doing some of that. I mean, we do have an interfund transfer to support, the ancillary things that I just mentioned, but we couldn't as it's set up now, supplement our general fund budget with out-of-county trash. It has to be used to support that enterprise of solid waste collection and disposal. Have any more? Other questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Henderson.
This doesn't really have anything to do with the budget, but do we have any serious prospects for anything at Berry, if you can elaborate on it?
Well, I can't tell you, the question is about, do we have serious prospects at Berry Hill Mega Park? I can tell you that not only do we have extremely serious projects and prospects currently underway at Berry Hill Mega Site, but we've had some tremendous opportunities in just the past couple years. Unfortunately, the site is extremely attractive to large industries like automobile manufacturers. And it's just very attractive because there are so few sites east of the Mississippi or in the United States at all that have cobbled together that much land in a single tract that is developable in 1,000-acre increments. And we have that at Berry Hill. So we generate interest from very large projects, and usually we make it very far into the process before losing. For example, we lost a Toyota Mazda project, and we compete with Greensboro. They're our nearest competitor. Our site is so much better than the Guilford County mega site. We have done much more to develop it, much more to make it shovel ready. So we usually fare well against our competition. A lot of times we lose these big projects because they end up expanding on existing sites, or they go to old car manufacturing mothball sites in the Midwest that are available and have the existing infrastructure. But we are still extremely busy, active, competitive. I just believe we're moments from major announcement at all times. And it's crushing to the Board of Supervisors and the City of Danville and to our economic development staffs when we don't win, because there's a lot of energy that goes into making that site available and known and competitive in our economic development arena. And we're still extremely positive. I know the public is frustrated. It's been a it's a long project. The thing has just become competitive in the last 36 months. So we've been out there for almost 12 years. Well, it's only the last 3 years that we are really generating substantial and competitive projects because we weren't ready. It took millions of dollars of grading, of utility investments. We have 7 million gallons of water capacity a day coming from Eden. We're presently constructing another 2.2 million from Danville. The scale of this is just so large, it takes a long time to develop. And I'm positive that there's announcements in our future soon.
Does the fact that we're not setting directly on the interstate names, does that have a lot to do with it?
Absolutely. Interstate is the #1 box to check. It's always at the top. Accessibility. How far am I to a badged interstate? And they don't want to hear, well, we have 4-lane controlled access between Greensboro and Brown Summit. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear, yes, are you on the interstate, or no? And the answer is no. And that is a competitive disadvantage. Absolutely. Other questions? Well, thank you all for coming. It is nice to see everybody, and I hope our folks at home get a chance to review this at their leisure. Again, we will be doing this in Tunstall High School tomorrow night. Board of Supervisors meets at 4. The Tunstall meeting is at 6. We will do a public hearing on Thursday night, and then next Tuesday, we will, the 6th, I believe, we will have a work session with the Board of Supervisors at 3 p.m. So thank you all for coming. I hope you have a good night. Thanks. Oh, thank you.